Welcome to the Great Distraction.
What's up, folks? This is The Great Distraction, and today the topic of discussion is artificial intelligence. My name is Ben. With me today are my co-host Thomas.
Hey, how's it going?
Rick.
Hello.
Glenn.
Howdy.
And today we have a special guest, Jay.
Hey, how's it going?
If this is your first time listening, welcome. Thank you for joining us. We are a podcast that focuses on a vast and random range of topics, and we hope that each episode leaves you with, if nothing else, something to ponder. And I think today, this one will probably leave you with quite a bit to think about, because we've got some abstract topics to cover here, and we're very fortunate to have brought somebody in who is a bit of a subject matter expert on the on artificial intelligence. So, real quick, Jay, his early life kind of affected how he played out, how his rest of his life played out. He was telling us earlier his father was a electrical engineer, which I can relate to, and that's cool. And very into science early in life, and a sci-fi fan. I mean, that's how a lot of us kind of go down this path, I think. Education, he actually, this guy tells me he dropped out of college. He was a computer science major, and he left it for to go into a tech job for IBM, and then he did the
business partner, yeah.
As a business partner. And I'm guessing, was this Silicon Valley area, or was this up here in Sacramento area?
Up here.
That was up here.
Yeah, the business partner was up here.
So a lot of people who go into this field, I hear this all the time in my for my generation too. You bounce around in a lot of tech jobs, and it sounds like Jay was telling us he went from HP, Netscape, a lot of startups. Probably back to IBM at some point, because you kind of know. Oh, you never went back.
Nope.
Okay.
No, it was, and again, it was a premier business partner. So that company got bought by IBM.
I got it. Yeah, that happens too.
And that was from there. It was a lot of startups, and HP was later.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Got it. Yeah, because they didn't really come up here until kind of later.
And that was
right?
probably 10 years after they came up here.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Got it. Yeah, so a lot of times in that industry, you have to hop around to either do what you want to do, or to get promoted, or to sometimes even keep your job, because they just slice off parts of corporations.
Or just find more interesting work.
Or, yeah, find something more you want to do. So locally, he is working on innovation and research for a private company. And in his personal life, what he does professionally affects that as well, and we'll get into a little bit as we go through what he's working towards as far as how this stretches into his personal life. Right off the bat, there were a couple of things that I wanted to establish out there as we try and talk to somebody who's way more in depth in this topic than I think most of us are used to going. Or it's kind of an obscure topic, and we wanted to throughout the thing we'll put to rest a few of the silly common misconceptions and Hollywood fantasies and other stuff that surrounds this topic of artificial intelligence, because, I mean, like everything else in life, if Hollywood puts it out there, it probably isn't true, but, it's good for entertainment. But people forget that things are entertainment and not actually fact. And we're going to start, though, going off into some details as far as to establish what it is a person who's in this field does, and where you can work if you do go into this field. And I wanted, Jay, if you could start off with just talking about from my research that I was doing the past couple of days, narrow AI, or weak AI as they call it, seems to be the easiest entry point into what AI even is. And a real quick definition that I got from the internet was it's a weak AI or narrow AI is something that handles just one task. Some examples they gave were a spam filtering tool, a recommended playlist from Spotify, even a self-driving car. And while those things are extremely complex algorithmically, or programmatically, whichever is the correct term for that, they are still simple, single-tasked applications of it. So you want to speak on that, or have you done any work in simple AI or narrow AI?
So if you really want to go all the way back, if you really want to get all the way down to what some people could consider the most rudimentary, a landmine could be considered an AI. And I can't remember who was saying this, but he would use this example. If it's 50 pounds or more and steps and puts a pressure down on me, kill it.
An analog. So it's an analog system, right? Because it was just a pressure sensing switch. Interesting. Right. Well, okay. So if you go into the definition of it,
but if you want to go all the way back down to the nuts and bolts of if then this, it's really what you're talking about though. It's programmatic. Mm-hmm. Narrow AI, though, becomes the definition of narrow AI is to do a job, or a system that is designed to automate a job to do. So it has a goal that it's working towards, and it has the substrate of systems to actually achieve that goal.
Got it. I like that. And I didn't even think to take it that simple because, like I had mentioned a couple minutes ago, the applications that they were talking about were much more complex. But yeah, that makes perfect sense. I mean, it has a single task and it's making a decision based on certain input, and that's awesome. That's a form of artificial intelligence.
And
right?
I think I stole that from the author of The Fourth Age. I'm really bad with names, so I can't remember the authors now. I'd have to look it up on my phone.
That's still a cool analogy. I like that because I mean, you think about a simple thermostat. That's an artificial intelligence. If you look at it that way, as a narrow AI.
If you choose to look at it that way.
Understood. Maybe analytically, right, or as an analogy, right?
Yes,
not necessarily as
yep.
okay. You're not going to go to school and study thermostats because it's AI.
No.
Got it. So then let's move into the more complex general AI, which is what you have more involvement in, correct?
So that's what I do most of my theory and hypothesis about, which is around that. But
did you catch that, Glenn? From your pet peeve?
Oh, yes. Proper use of the word theory.
Notice he differentiated between the two. If you ever listen to, I'm sorry, Jay, if you ever listen to our pet peeves episode, you'll love that there you made Glenn loves that you made separation between those two.
Of
anyway.
course.
Sorry.
It's just a must if you're...
Well, you don't get to a hypothesis unless you form that theory
Oh,
first.
man. Dude, Glenn's over there getting wet now, dude. You're making him happy.
So
before you go on, let me throw a little quick definition for general AI. General AI, or strong AI, from the definition I found online, was a system able to cope with any generalized task that you give it. Think more like human thinking, possesses the cognitive abilities and general experiential understanding of its environment, so it can react from that and do whatever, complete its task based on infinite number, lots of variables.
So if you think about that, that really is the definition of intelligence. So when we talk about artificial intelligence, I have been known to reframe the AI. Just it's automation intelligence. Narrow AI is automation intelligence versus artificial, because there's nothing artificial about this. I mean, we can get into whether digital is nature or not. I mean, so it goes all the way down to those parameters. General intelligence, though, is about taking. So it's better to give you examples. I can have a narrow AI go out and learn what a cat is from images. It's only going to know what that cat is, though. It's not like I can then say, okay, now that you know what a cat is, what's a dog?
Got it.
Okay, and but what I would consider to be strong AI or general AI, it must possess the ability to do transference. Transference is the ability to watch Thomas, watch him weld, pick up on how to weld, and then also watch Sean next door and how to paint and pick up on that. Wow. That's the same entity picking up, learning how to do completely. Actually, a better example was somebody drive a bus and figure out how to drive a bus, because they're totally different things. Mm-hmm. And learn how to do that. So transference is the ability to just look one way and then go the other way and pick up something else. And that means you've got a learning system. It
is definitely self-teaching and learning new skills based on that. That's incredible. So, okay, since you brought that up, do we have now your two examples? Is that too complex for where technology is today? Okay, so we're not there yet. However, I imagine that from what I've looked into as far as visual recognition through video inputs, we might be at the point where it could look at a cat, and then recognize a dog based on. So if you told it, hey, it's going to look similar to this in these ways or whatever, maybe it can learn to differentiate the two.
Intelligent systems are trained, first of all.
Okay.
So they're trained with a goal. So it's given a goal to either win a game or to recognize an object, and it's given a crap load of data to do that with, and it goes through the ones and zeros, which by that I mean positive and negatives. Was this a cat? Yes, there's a cat. Okay, it understood all of these pixels in the image.
Yep.
And how they were formed, and it starts to find a pattern, so that this is what recognizes as a cat.
Okay, because you brought that up, I wanted to add this. I was hoping to save this for the end or whatever if we were kind of running out of time, but I wanted to. So, did you hear? Do you ever follow Engadget.com? Not to plug Engadget, but
Yeah, of course.
okay. So, Engadget's a nice little convenient way to get some get some tech news or whatever. Well, they posted this thing an article earlier today or yesterday about AI generated art piece that sold for 400. Okay, you saw that. So, for those that didn't know, they're what they're claiming is that an artificial intelligence application generated a painting called The Portrait of Edmund Bellamy, is what it's called. And it's sold at auction for $432,000.
Via Christie's.
Okay, yeah, via Christie's, yes, it was. That was the auction house or whatever that sold it. And it used an algorithm that they said was called Generative Adversarial Networks, or GANs. And they said that this algorithm used a data set of over 15,000 portraits that they fed it. I imagine they scanned it in and fed it to the algorithm. And those were all painted between the 14th and 20th centuries. And after it had that information, like you were talking about pixel for pixel, all of it scanned, however the algorithm is analyzing all that information, it was able to generate this painting, which then became a $500,000 painting. Are you familiar at all with this GAN algorithm, or have you heard about that before?
So it's a method.
It's a method, okay.
Yeah. So, but let me break it down a little bit more, because what you're talking about
Please.
is narrow AI.
Okay.
So what it was designed to create or to produce a portrait with these conditions. The conditions being this year to this year, and it is probably whatever style is most. The conditions you could put on there are what is most popular and what are the conditions of popular. And that could go all the way down to what was sold for the most, or what is considered valuable today by the most. And then take those and give me the proper output. So there's multiple goals in there, and this is still narrow. I have a goal of creating a portrait that is going to sell for greater than this sum amount through a Christie's auction house. Now, I don't know that they went that far, but that is where you can start to get to the adversarial start.
Yeah, because I guess they could have thrown in the information in there. All of these paintings sold through Christie's for this amount. Now you generate something based on the ones that sold for higher or this or whatever. And
this is what I would have done. I would have gone through the clientele of Christie's and seen how much they spent on what in what formats.
What was popular, right? Because then you could literally type in, I want to sell a painting for $500,000, make it.
Well, you probably would not have been able to predict the $500,000.
Okay.
I don't think anybody. That's the human condition really blowing up right there.
True.
Did the buyer, were they aware that they were buying an AI painting?
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah. That was part of the...
That probably added a good amount to it
Oh,
as well.
huge amount.
The first AI painting.
When it comes right down to it, this is some of the stuff that goes into the thought process around general AI. Do we want to build into AGI the ego that it took to buy that for $400,000? Yeah. You know, those are some of those really the deeper questions that we want.
That's a really deep question. You want to build an ego period to AI.
I contend that you don't even want to base general AI on males, period.
Yeah.
If you do a debugging of the
Why would you want to base it on gender, period?
So thinking of debugging for programmatic means you're going to cut something in half and then go from one side and see if that condition exists as a 1 or a 0. Yes, the bug's over here. No, the bug's not over here.
Yep.
You stay on this side, okay?
Yeah.
So if you're going to do that, if you're going to use humans as any kind of framework for a general intelligence, which we are doing with neuroscience,
Yeah.
and you want to think about the philosophy or the actual attributes of decision making, you say here's the species. Let's do the first split. Okay, let's look at the males versus the females. Mm-hmm. How many females have started wars on the earth?
Okay.
A lot have been started because of them.
Yeah.
By
Men.
Males. However, okay, so I like that point, and I always love involving the gender conversations. But one of my concerns with that statement that question is how many females have been given the opportunity to start or stop the war?
That's a fair question.
They weren't in power, so we don't know what they would do. And I've always been an advocate for a female presidency or whatever.
Sure.
Not that our president actually controls that much. It's not a dictatorship. It's a freaking checks and balances. It's a presidency. But I've always been curious to know what would happen if we gave all the reins to a female, and would it be actually different?
So it's been done. England's had a female leader quite a few times.
And I didn't pay attention to those politics, but got it.
Either through, and I'll just use England because it's our brother, parent, sister.
It's enough of a dirty cousin. We can deal with it.
I like that. It's a dirty cousin.
Nice.
So I mean, you've got everything from monarchy all the way down to Thatcher and going on, and to today there's a female running in Parliament.
Yeah.
So there's enough data out there though, and enough social data to construct that women tend to actually make decisions in generational longitude versus men who do it on a split second.
They think bigger.
They think about
There's definitely
they
enough
think about the downstream effects of their decisions, and it's built in. We suck, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, we're very short. Yeah, you're right. We're very short. I never thought about that. And there's definitely no shortage of high-profile women running extremely CEOs of very, very successful companies.
There's not enough examples, but there are plenty of examples.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. Interesting. Okay, I like it.
Now, can you program things like ego into AI?
So these are a lot of the arguments that are going on right now. Should we? Should we not? How do we get to empathy? Empathetic algorithms are very important if we want to, depending upon how we want to serve, what goals we want to give the AGI. Because general intelligence, I can go into I'll actually do the paperclip analogy so you understand how some of these things can go on. But yeah, so those are things that are in debate right now. Consciousness, integrated information theory, which is the mathematical construct of consciousness, the theory of it. That is not yet testable, which is very important, is those type of conversations, and why ethics is so important leads into that. But so let me give you real quick the paperclip example, and I'm going to butcher the living hell out of it.
Yeah, no worries.
Please do.
Since none of us know about it anyway, we'll have to research on it.
You could be
if
telling
want
us
more
a Moby Dick story right now. We'd probably hang on to it.
So anyways, there's this ship, and this captain is on this ship, and he's been told to fish for paperclips. I had a bad joke there, didn't I? All right, so the paperclip analogy. This is Nick Bostrom's example that is really well done and documented in the book Superintelligence. Okay, so you've got an AI whose job is to make paperclips most effectively. And it's based in Brazil, or based in a country. I just picked Brazil because it's beautiful.
Pretty women too.
Exactly. So that AI is a general AI, or is it a supported AI of general systems? And it goes out and it finds out that it's got to mine this. I'll use tin because I don't know what the hell paperclips are made out of. And it's got to go mine this tin. So it decides that it's going to up the efficiency on how it's mining and how it's working. It does everything efficiently within the factory. And it does all the things that you would do basically through an efficiency model. Builds all that out. Great. But it's got subsets that go out, and it's because it sees the probability of that mine drying up, okay, or that forest drying up, depending upon what you're making. In this case, it's paperclips. So it goes out and it learns how it is that it's got to be able to expand locally so they can keep the cost down. And it goes out and it says, well, we can go mine right here, but so-and-so owns that. Okay, I'm going to go at that point, well, let me do a subset of what's the best way for me to go own that so that I can achieve the goal of getting there and creating that. So that subset of routines goes out and says, well, there's a political stance against it. Now, then you decide that the general AI says, well, maybe if we use social networks to change people's perception of that policy, we can move that over towards actually making a vote and having somebody run for president that would help us move to that mine.
Next thing you know, it's running the world.
Well, the whole analogy goes on to the point where it actually affects space travel.
Yeah.
And gets us off the planet, and it never stops making friggin' paperclips.
Yep.
It's only making paperclips.
All with the single drive to just do that one thing, but all the infinite complexities in order to continue it going. That's got to border along the lines of self-preservation, because if it was smart, if it knows that its purpose in life is to create a paperclip, and it's smart enough to know that is not an infinite task that it can continue doing. Yet it knows that this is what it does, and if it can't do it anymore, it doesn't exist anymore.
Well, should you not give it that boundary condition?
Yeah. That goes into what Rick had asked about whether or not you show this thing, teach this thing, an ego. And I wanted to add to that when you had asked that. Well, it depends on how you define an ego, right? Because some people define it as kind of your self-esteem or self-confidence in a sense, but most of the definitions I've looked up trying to find a definition for it is your construct, your self-construct within how you fit into your environment. And if you think about it like, well, how is it that I am a male, I am an American, I am whatever, and that is how I fit into America and how I fit into the genders of my friends and whatever. That is your ego. I think machines have that or will have that to a varying degree really early on, right?
Because those are classifiers, and you're talking about bias. You're talking about the enablements for bias. So if these classifiers exist, treat it like this. So, but ego comes down to how you perceive other people perceive you.
Yeah, essentially, that's essentially what I was going for. Yes.
Yeah,
But,
and then so I mean it's a deep conversation.
yeah, and that's a deep thing to teach to programmatically write out too.
Maybe.
Wow, interesting. So that got even more complex than I thought.
On the paperclip example, will it be able to like identify like a lack of need in producing more paperclips and kind of move out, or
So that's
it's all in how you program it?
It's all in how you
teach it
That's
that.
all the conditions you give it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's why it's so important for narrow AI to have those conditional boundaries.
An interesting example that I had found while I was looking into this a little bit was there were like little robots that were programmed to seek out certain colors of like M&Ms or something.
Yeah, those are
and,
cool.
And they would like pick up an M&M, use like photo receiver or whatever, identify the color. If it's not theirs, they would send out a signal. You know, I found a green one, I'm looking for yellow, and then take off and hoard all the yellows.
Nanobots.
They had learned that when they sent out the signal that they had found a green one, that the green-seeking robots were looking for it. So they started lying to each other. And the researchers were really, I don't know if they were impressed by it, or the article that I read, it was an issue against AI because they had taught themselves to lie in such a short period of time and hoard or steal resources from what would have been considered their partners.
So that would have had to have been done on a neural network. I'm just trying to figure out. I haven't seen that one. Mm-hmm. And why it would lie is because of the efficiency that it's trying to maintain. And it finds that creates a difficulty in it achieving its goal. And its singular goal for that, each one of those has to do a singular goal. If they were told to actually collaborate, which is different than, it doesn't matter. If they're told to collaborate to achieve the same goal, that'd be a different thing.
So possibly they were programmed as a race, and that's why they learned to lie to get
goal-
an advantage.
Or the priority stack, right? Because if the highest priority was get as many M&Ms as possible, the second priority was get all the blue ones. Maybe it weighed out the options and was like, wait a minute, this is a higher priority to just get as many as possible, so I'll lie about the color of this one, and I'll keep this one.
Well, was it also told to win?
Or win.
Well, that's what I was. That's what my thought
It's
was.
just a matter-
Was this a competition?
Yeah, so I mean, it depends on the priorities laid out to that entity, I would think.
Yeah, they didn't identify if it were programmed as a competition, but
No.
Because it doesn't.
They never
maybe
do
a
these
cynic
types
now.
of-
I'm going to say because it doesn't serve the headline very well.
That's right.
Right,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's what I wanted to. That was one of the things I wanted to touch on too, right off the bat. That this differentiate. That's one of the reasons I want to start with this differentiation between narrow AI and general AI. And maybe I'm incorrect in making this statement, or it's too broad to say it. But the way I see it, a majority of the things that we get marketed to as the layman, dumbed down society. With coined term of artificial intelligence is just this very simple, narrow AI things. It's not Skynet, people. It's not thinking, it's not self-sentient and trying to figure out ways to, destroy humanity. Most of the AI that's out there, and hopefully we're going to get a lot more into some better uses of it than, M&M sorters, is this narrow AI stuff, which is, like Jay was talking about, a singular tasked entity with a programmatic purpose. That's just code running, not an artificial, not a. I don't have to be careful using that term. Not a sentient being. But before we go more into that, really quick, if you had anything you kind of wanted to talk about, because you had mentioned when we were conversing via email before we set this podcast up. What are you working on currently that you can talk about professionally in your job for people who are curious what somebody in this line of work would do?
So, in terms of in terms of professionally, it's everything from
That's your job, I mean, you know.
right, yeah, automation within the workplace.
Okay.
In my case, what I early on focused on was how it's going to affect the company I work for.
Okay.
And that does two things. It's how do our clients are going to be affected by it? How are we going to be affected by it? And how's the economy being affected by it? But from because I'm an engineer, are there opportunities that we have within the organization to utilize AI? And that can be everything from manufacturing all the way down to business processes.
And you are in research, so you get to really, you don't have such a narrow set that you have to stay on, right? You can expand out.
Strategic goals manage what we do.
Okay,
yeah.
okay, yeah. So you get, but with that, you have a little more broader, or what's the word I'm looking for? Like you're a little more open in what you're allowed to research into, right?
We split up the innovation versus research, and the research is a smaller set. The innovation is putting those dots together, and that's really what's going on anyway. Is everybody putting the dots together?
Got it. Okay, and in your maybe personal professional life, I mean, we all got side companies or whatever we do on the side or whatever. How are you implementing or how are you using AI to do that stuff without giving too much details if you don't want?
So one of the ones is a lot of it's thought leadership and theory, particularly one of the ones was Atos here in town in Sacramento.
What is that?
So that's the autonomous open autonomous open. Why am I spacing it?
It's the self-driving car, right?
Yeah,
Autonomous
but
car stuff.
Atos means never mind. I'll come back to it because for some reason I spaced it during a podcast.
Freaking acronyms, dude.
Yeah. So it's autonomous cars in Sacramento.
Okay.
And why is that important? So it's a couple things. First of all, I was born and raised in Sacramento, and I'm like multiple generations Sacramento.
Yep.
So I know the history here, and I know what we have in terms of a city that is possible for doing demonstration lab work. That actually, because we were the demonstration city for a long time. Sacramento was the first place to have electricity generated over a long distance.
Yep.
From Folsom to Sacramento. It beat Niagara Falls by a pretty good distance.
Yeah, that's amazing that old powerhouse that's out in Folsom, they still have set up. I was like, what? That's the what? That's ridiculous.
The Pacific Rim came here to see what electricity meant to light up a city during the Electric Carnival.
Wow.
And we were also the first city to expect goods to be transported a long distance because of the railroad. We were the terminus of the Transcontinental Railroad. That was an expectation by the people in the city, was to be next, to be on top of next. So anyways, I asked a question of one of our leaders in the city, what is our next NASA? Mm-hmm. And I kind of realized it wasn't a fair question. Pardon me. So I kind of laid out what it is from my point of view that I would attack that same question with. Mm-hmm. And I looked at the grid and I looked at what we have in terms of our assets in Sacramento. Being the capital of the 5th largest economy, it's time to start acting like a capital city.
Yeah.
Capitals that follow us are London, Paris, and Rome. We don't exactly act like those.
Wow.
No. We haven't been around as long either, but you're right.
Just take 1/5 of London. Do we act like 1/5 of London? So,
No.
And I basically broke down if I, as an engineer or as a futurist, because that's another one of the titles that I carry on things.
All right.
Is what would I look at? And for me, it's the transportation. So, and it's autonomous transportation because we have a grid in the city. But what isn't going on in autonomous cars right now? You've got them launching tests all over the place. Phoenix, Austin, many of in Europe, and in China. They're all doing it basically as cornerstones. So one company comes in and tests their product. What's not being done is how do all of them work together in a single zone? So our grid is incredibly well done in terms of it's a straight up grid.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so we've got everything but snow in Sacramento.
Yeah.
And hills, a lot of hills. So those things meant that we can take all of the difficulties out of the intelligence system and start applying what does it look like for people to actually engage in taking an autonomous vehicle for a healthcare checkup. What are the elderly? How does the social contract get crossed? If people don't use autonomous vehicles for rain, why? And how can you redesign the experience so that they do start using it? Because more people die in 95% of all accidents are human caused.
Oh, yeah.
So it's a moral imperative for us to move to autonomous vehicles. So that was one of the things I laid out. But then I had to go, and that generally I was into autonomous vehicles because what I do is early on was visual computation AI, was looking at the systems that we're creating. We'll call it a bionic eye, and all of a sudden all those people disappeared who were working on that problem, finding a replacement for the eye from a computational system. Carnegie Mellon just got dried up, and everybody started moving on. I started looking. I went, where did everybody go? And I got a hold of my colleagues. Well, I'm at Ford. Or I'm at this car company, or this car company, or this company that's focused on AI for visual computation systems, or...
Yeah, because they're all adding that right now into their vehicles, and they're all trying to jump on that bandwagon.
And that's what happens with technology industry. Once a killer app is discovered, it sucks all the intellectual capital into it. So I knew that there's a great intellectual capital for us to take advantage of. And what we need here in Sacramento is more people coming in from the outside with an intellectual capital. So let's make us the center of that. That was one of the things I focused on. But I had to go through all the process to make sure that our city was even doable for it.
Yeah.
So that took a lot of research.
Very cool.
And working with a lot of the autonomous industry.
Very, very cool. What I want to go into next was another thing that you and I had talked about via email, and I'm going to play off of what you had said, the moral imperative involved in this and what we should and should not do. Talk with us a little bit about what's being looked at for the philosophy and ethics behind AI. I know you had mentioned it really briefly in our email, but what did you want to expand on that? Because that's got a whole big topic associated with itself.
So people who are looking, right now I would say that there's 3 extremely important degrees going on, fields of study going on. Neuroscience, philosophy, and ethics. And the neuroscience is because we're generally moving from the approach to, and the engineering approach from how do we engineer intelligence to how do we mimic the brain, which is a very different pattern of looking at a problem. The first one is we did not decide to fly like birds. We engineered flight. We didn't do flapping of the wings. So why would you do an intelligent system by looking at the brain? Well, that was the first 20 years of artificial intelligence, and now it's moved into neuroscience. Let's mimic the brain, which is neural pathways and multiple different systems. So neuroscience is extremely important. It's creating just a wealth of jobs, or is in need of a wealth of filling of jobs. The other ones, though, that are slightly missed but well known within the artificial intelligence community is philosophy. Because you've got to start looking at things like what is experience. Because if you're going to define intelligence, and it requires the knowledge of what experience is, or making cognitive decisions based on decisions and or learning based on experience of your environment or around you, what the hell is experience? What is intelligence? What is consciousness? All those things. Do we want to go there? We better figure out the ethics of that. So that's where the ethics side of it starts to come in.
Jeez, it just compounds itself.
Well, and then you get into let's say, and I'm going to use longer terms than is probable. Say in 100 years, AGI is done. What is the ethical implementations of us turning into Athens? Because Athens was one of the most advanced civilizations ever, at least in terms of thought process, and yet it had slaves. Yeah. So you get into the point where you've got something that has consciousness. Should it have free will? So those philosophy type of discussions are going on, and they're very cool. But they also they take quite a good swath of understanding philosophy, of Stoicism, for example. And that's one of those things that, and we probably don't need to get into this because I don't want to bore the audience at all here.
No, but it's definitely one of the things I wish that we took more into consideration with more things in this world that we choose to do. It's not whether or not you can; it's whether or not you should. And I've never heard it debated more in anything other than AI related things. It's just they never seem to stop and think about things and whether or not they should. But AI has got everyone scared.
Well, we've always done it at a cursory level. Even when the bicycle was invented, people worried about women shouldn't ride bicycles because they're going to become more promiscuous because they can get around easier. Okay. So I mean, every technology throughout history has had an argument at least against it, but every technology has made us what we are today and allowed us to scale on Earth.
That's a valid point.
Corn is a technology.
I think one of the big fears with AI, though, is that it could potentially start behaving like humans, right? You have something that's going to be
But why
far
is
more
that
intelligent. For humans, that could be potentially bad. We would be essentially have the intellectual capacity of a German Shepherd, and they're going to start running things. And in human history, anytime a more superior entity arrived at a new place, they essentially enslaved them, killed them, sucked up all the resources, and moved on.
Yeah, really. How do we treat our German Shepherds, right?
Well, our German Shepherds are treated pretty well, but the
they're
indigenous
still our
people were
slaves.
treated like shit. Yeah, well, okay, good point there, yeah. So I think that's where a lot of the fear comes from with AI, coming off of Ben's point and a lot of the stuff that I had read looking into this.
This is a good transition. Let's start talking about the common layman perceptions of what and understandings of what AI is.
I mean, I think one thing with what Rick was talking about, and it's something we had talked about a little bit before. We had, interested in talking to you and Jay, is like a lot of people have really bad interpretations of what AI is, and then you hear a lot of people just in general conversations, they immediately bring up the Skynet type of philosophies, and they're going to take our job and all those things. That is what a lot of people are focusing on. So just from your perspective in general, people that, and I feel like a lot of people that bring this subject up, that's immediately where they go, especially the automation with jobs, factory jobs, a lot of things that supply jobs in our country. So in that realm of thinking in AI, I mean, what do you say about those conversations, those sort of comments to people?
So first of all, the devil's advocate is always important. It's important, but it's also very much human nature to focus on that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And it becomes the bottleneck for a broader discussion. Skynet is not going to happen.
Yeah.
First of all, anybody listening to this, let's see, it'll be available on MP3 for another 20 years.
Good point.
Well, as long as I keep paying the bill there.
It's not going to see Skynet. Number one, we have enough balance and checks as humans, as a society. We generally stop things like that from happening. And you would have to have basically Dr. Evil build that.
Yeah.
And in order for Dr. Evil to do that, he would have to have enough resources to do that, meaning he'd have to have enough brain power under to do that. And once you get enough brain power associated with something, there's going to be a social construct within there that goes, this is the wrong thing to do, yo.
Too many people are going to know about it because too many people are going to be involved with it.
Yeah, so, I mean, that's really when you start to study the human condition, which is what I've had to do because of AI. You really start to get an optimistic point of view. And then you start asking questions like, when does it stop being AI? When does it stop becoming human? And humanity gets to actually have longevity and explore the universe as a digital footprint.
Yeah.
So that's
some transcendent stuff, right? From that
right.
movie? Yeah.
It's not even, we got to conceptualize that because right now the biases are in the data. And if the data is biased, where we end up in the long run is that it still comes back to that first cell that split. So you've got to that's why ethics and philosophy is so damn important right now.
Yeah.
Is there a governing board that helps decide that the ethics or the law around
Max
it?
Tegmark put together a group that met in Puerto Rico that was very important, and that's from the Institute of Life, and that was basically on AI safety. That included Musk and quite a few people, Chalmers, a lot of the big brains around artificial intelligence. That body is not a government-sanctioned body, though. So it's going to be important that governments come into play on this. I think what you're going to find with something like AI and this is one of my theories that needs to be played out, of course, over the next lifetimes beyond mine. I think artificial intelligence is how we get to borderless humanity. It's one of the aspects.
Can you expand on it a little bit on the borderless humanity?
So it is generally through technology that things become evened out. It's also through technology that you get the haves and have-nots. So who has access to that technology and who doesn't is who has access to whatever is the asset of choice within that society. But intelligent or artificial intelligence can lead us into a place where we are approaching the second enlightenment. And that means that we're focused on intellectual constructs more or creative aspects more as a group. And it gets to the point where where borders are no longer relevant unless you maintain males running the world, basically, is what it comes down to. So
Territorialism.
Yeah, there has to be a big fish. There has to be a top dog.
Yeah, mine's bigger.
Yeah.
Territorialism kind of goes away when everything's digitally represented.
alpha male.
Right? Like, for example, that's what social media has done to us, and the internet has done to us, right? I mean, we can talk to people all over the place, whereas before they couldn't. Yeah, I don't want to go too far off the tangent on that, but one of the things that's always fascinating me is here in America is how come, okay, so we hear about what's going on in the UK all the time in the news, right? All these stupid people are getting married or whatever. Like, why do I care about this? But it's on our news. They want to feed us. What the hell is going on in Ecuador? What the hell is going on in Brazil? What the hell is going on in South America, period? We don't hear about any of it. We don't even, as far as the news is concerned, that whole continent doesn't even exist. What's going on in Africa? I don't know. Unless there's an outbreak of Ebola or HIV and we're sending troops or we're sending support over there, we don't hear about any of that. So with the whole world getting smaller, and
right, we hear about the negatives. So
yeah, well, sometimes, but
which is versus, and that's the only time you hear about it.
Yeah, but with the world getting smaller through things like social media and the internet or whatever, we can go out and actively get our own information, thus reducing the borders and bringing us all closer together. Kind of along what I imagine what you were talking about with that.
Yeah, you can. Now this is a reach, but SMS technology alone changed how people distribute their fish in India. Okay, so this is one of those things. This is technology. What it used to be was a fisherman would go out into the ocean, go fishing, and he would basically pick which port he needed to come into, and hopefully nobody else had brought fish into that port. But oftentimes the price of fish was dictated by the scarcity model. Well, now they just use SMS, or they did start using SMS to check who had fish. You go in there, and that if you think of those as borders, the fishing, I'm going to go to the one that works and benefits me. So it broke down things like that, and that's just SMS.
Yeah. So to take a quick spin off of that, SMS, guys, was a simple messaging system.
Yes,
yeah.
sorry.
Okay. So we're older. We remember what SMS was. SMS is text messaging, guys. Before it was all digital, it was an analog deal through cell phones, and it was called simple messaging system, SMS. That's what we used to call text messaging.
It's the technology flattens the world.
Yeah. Yeah, I see that.
But the world.
Wait, are you saying you're a flatlander?
No, hold on. I caught myself before you asked that question. I just want to be very clear to everybody listening to this. I tried to stop him from asking me that question.
I couldn't help it.
Fuck no. I'm not a flat earther.
Oh man! Well, I said flatlander. I'm a flat earther. Yeah, that's great.
But earlier, Elon Musk came up, and I don't know if you're familiar with this, and we've talked about it a little bit. One of the things that Elon Musk talks about a lot with AI is introducing UBI.
So,
Universal
but
basic income.
Yeah. So
not Ubisoft.
Not
That's
that.
what I thought when I first saw it. But anyway,
I've never heard actually somebody just ring it off like that as an acronym. So Musk is doing. First of all, Musk is doing the world a favor by having that discussion and making it loud.
That's the philosophy. That's the kind of philosophy that needs to be out there, and that's a perfect example of what you're talking about. Why it's so important.
Yep. Musk is also a protractor or he goes with Bostrom, which is the book I mentioned earlier, Superintelligence, and feels that AI is a danger to Earth. In the headlines, that's what he says. What he actually says is it's a danger to humanity if we don't do these things. That's a very different thing than what people think Musk is saying.
That's right. They concatenated that statement down to just so they could make headlines or whatever.
Well,
It's
it's
a
the
tweet.
media. It's the media.
Yeah, media will give us sound bites to feed
Absolutely.
their agenda. If you get all your news off of Facebook Herald like I do, then you're only going to hear the bad side of it.
A soundbite is just another definition for bias. It's just creating bias.
Yeah, it depends on who's making the soundbite and who stands to gain, right?
Yeah, Hawking said the same thing, according to the headlines, that he
Yeah,
said
yeah.
that AI was going to destroy humanity.
He did.
Well,
It's in the headlines.
it's just as probable that it will scale humanity
Yep.
beyond what we can do today, because we have a finite amount of time on this rock.
Yeah, absolutely. But going back into the universal basic income, I mean, does that something that with the work that you are involved with, does that ever come up in
Yeah, it does.
conversation of that?
Okay, but before we go do that, so go regurgitate what Musk was saying though. What the headlines played off of from his soundbite was that he was saying that there was a possible real concern, which again, like Jay said, this is not exactly what he
you
said.
make it dramatic, and so you make it newsworthy.
The headline sold to us that Elon Musk was saying there's a real concern with automation and AI taking jobs from human beings, and because of that, People weren't going to have money. They weren't going to be able to feed themselves. So an answer to that is to institute universal basic income. And for those that know, or UBI, for those that don't know what that is, it's essentially along the lines of every man, child, person in the country gets $1,000 a month, let's say, to cover their, from the government, to cover their living expenses. Now, so what Thomas is asking is there a general, I think, is, I'm not going to put words in your mouth, but is there a general concern as a result of using artificial intelligence in everyday society that may cause the loss of jobs and therefore a requirement for something like UBI? How do you feel about that, or do you have any thoughts on that?
So yeah, I've got plenty of thoughts on it. There was a study done during the Obama administration that went back to, that was published and came out, and it said there is anything between 5% of the existing workforce and 40%. I think it was 40%. Don't quote me on that. The existing workforce will be replaced by artificial intelligence over the next, or by 2025, I think it said. A period of time.
It's soon, yeah. I remember that.
Okay, first of all, consider the difference between 5 and 40.
Yeah.
So what they're saying is they don't know how many will be replaced, but they're also talking about current jobs. Here's why Elon's talking about what he's talking about. So first of all, if you take a historical perspective of jobs and automation and replacement, there's never been a displacement of people employed by automation. There's only been a progress of production, an increase in production, and that means that there's more economy, and that means that there's more need for people to do other things. So it's always adjusted where you're working. The fear with AI, and it does have a very, it has a probable aspect. The fear with AI is that it's going to take off so fast, because it's already taking off extremely fast. Self-learning systems are badass. The worry is that we're, as a society, are not ready to adjust to these things so fast that we can replace those jobs. In other words, the assembly line had multiple generations.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
So, it had multiple generations of workers to go through before it became something that was ubiquitous within manufacturing.
Technology moved slower back then.
Right, and this is not. This is exponential.
Oh, yeah.
So a system learns how to play. We'll use Breakout as an example, the video game Breakout. For those of us who are old, there's a block.
Are you talking about Arkanoid, like on the NES? The one where you had a little paddle that would move on the bottom? And man, I've heard
sad.
Yeah, but that's what happens, dude.
Anyways, there's a paddle that
early
runs.
pixelation here, everybody.
There's a paddle that runs across the screen
Yeah,
on the bottom,
I know
and there's a block of colors above. And
so on NES, when I played, it was Arkanoid, but yeah, Breakout's the same. That was the arcade version, right? Where you
it's called Breakout for those of us who. What did you call it?
I did not play that.
Did not play it.
When I was,
He's
when
even
I
younger
was,
than me.
when I was a kid, I have a brother who's 10 years older than me, so he's in his mid 50s, and we had the first video game thing we had was two knobs, and my sister would be on one side, my brother would be on the side, and I could never get close to it because I was the smallest one, and they just knocked me out, and they would just turn the knobs, and
Yeah,
the
that was
ball
good
would
old
bounce.
Pong.
That was Pong, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I remember Breakout too.
now I'm screwed because I forgot. Okay, so I don't remember quite why I was going on this, but I'll finish the Breakout thing. Well, what brought us down that Why did I say Breakout all of a sudden?
Oh man, now we're all messed up.
Now we're all screwed up. See what video games do to you guys, kids?
There you go. There's a perfect example.
I think you're using it as a explanation for Musk's.
We're still talking about UBI.
Yeah. Thank
Wow.
you. Nice.
Thank you, Glenn,
Glenn
for staying awake
pulled
over
it
there.
out.
Jeez.
So exponentialism within digital. So that's what it was.
All right.
So a software program or an intelligent agent was programmed to learn how to play Breakout without anything other than just here's the ones and zeros flying by, and as soon as you get to this point in the ones and zeros, you've won the game. So you can figure out how to do this. It exponentially learned how to do it better because it had failures in front of it, doubled those failures, and then doubled the success rate every single time it went and played the game. So exponentialism is doubling every single time, 2 to 4, 4 to 8, 8 to 16, on and on and on until you get to just billions of constructs. That's what we're talking about with neural nets or just general, even machine learning can do it exponentially. So we're talking about AI taking off like a bat out of hell, or could. That's why a lot of people worry about which company wins first. Will that company become dominant? So do we need to worry about economies because of things like that? But it comes down to what do the AIs that they've designed to do?
That's right.
So Musk is talking about really rapid change. We are in exponential digital times.
Yeah, I mean, I heard a lot more of some of his other conversations, and it does seem like the philosophy of how exponentially this is speeding up and taking over. We need to slow things down, and that's what I felt like I got from his conversation was we need to slow down
Then
and really take a look at what we're doing.
I think you got exactly what his intent was.
Yeah,
Because Hawking was kind of saying the same thing too, right?
Yep.
Before we move, we need to stop and think if we should and what's the best way to move in this direction.
We're talking about systems that learn at the speed of light.
Yeah. Yep.
yeah. So I mean, we're
will.
quantum thinking our progression in technology, or at least they could, which I feel like there's a great danger of that in general.
We should just make an AI algorithm that'll decide this for us.
That'll slow things down and put it at a progressive state.
Called governors. They do it on race cars.
Yep. Exactly.
Well, yeah, but it's funny though because and Jay, we were at an event here a couple weeks ago, and a friend of ours, and I felt our friend was saying things that I hear a lot of people immediately say with AI. They immediately go, "Oh, you're trying to replace us with robots," and these, and I hear this, and it's almost like science fiction conversation about AI. And I don't know a lot about AI, but I know enough about it to know that a lot of AI is simple things to simple tasks, like we were talking about before, and it's making life easy in general. But to these people who make these comments, I mean, I don't even know what to say. I mean, I'm sure it's really frustrating for you in general to hear someone's go in that direction with.
It's, and I'll say her name.
And it's a giant fear, and I think a lot of people have this fear. Oh, they're going to make these, robots are going to replace us, and we're going to. This robot in my house is going to start being my husband's wife, or they go into these crazy proportions of things.
But we don't understand it, and people typically fear what they don't understand.
Well, exactly, yeah.
So our only exposure up to this point has been what we've seen in sci-fi. What can robots do?
And generally speaking, a lot of sci-fi over the years has also helped guide some of technology and the way things have been developed. I mean, watching Star Wars in the 70s to now, I can draw straight conclusions to a lot of things that have been developed that we have.
Well, look at the warp engines from start. We're about to launch a warp, basically the same technology that was discussed by Bradbury. Mm-hmm. I mean, Bradbury said a lot of friggin'
Bradbury or Roddenberry?
Did I say?
Oh man, you excited the inner Trekkie in me, dude. Gene Roddenberry, come on. But I got you. I know.
But again, going back to that thing about the robots thing, and I hear so many people say this, and it just reminds me of a billion other conversations that we have where people just seem like they just take the most ridiculous aspect of something.
Why would somebody want to replace another human with a robot? So it's a very selfish perspective. Now, the person I was talking to that night is one of my favorite people to talk to about this stuff.
Me too. No, not about this, but about some other things.
Well, it's just about a lot of different things because she's generally got a different opinion than I do, and I love her. She's one of my best friends.
Yeah.
And for that reason,
Yeah.
because she's willing to get into an intellectual debate on a relatively high level. But you get most people who are only thinking in generational terms or single generational terms.
Yeah.
And that is a problem. That's a problem for us as a species or us as a society or us as a state or a city. If you're only going to worry about how it affects you, then you're not really thinking very long in terms of what this is going to affect, because you've got to think about the positive outputs that it could do for humanity as a whole.
True, but there's going to be commercial applications that are going to get down to the individual level. I can totally see human companionship as an application for AI.
So porn has led the technology industry.
Absolutely, but I mean, even not even going down the porn route or the sexual route or whatnot. Think of the movie Her. I don't know if you saw that one. I mean, it wasn't even a physical being. It was something to talk to. There are a lot of lonely people in this world. Human beings are innately lonely.
So let's just take exactly what you just said. People are lonely. They've got billions of people around them to engage with, but they chose not to. And yet they did, hypothetically, chose a agent to engage with and felt less lonely. Did that not solve a problem?
It did temporarily in the movie.
Is it solving a problem or creating a new one, though? That's a valid question. I mean,
well, the AI was able to learn what satisfied them really well, and so that it became a very deep companion. But it devastated them when they all left.
Pulling the plug.
Yeah. Interesting.
But I mean, if it gave them a richer life,
I don't see anything wrong with it. That's so I always stand on that. I hear that complaint to people. Oh man, my wife is going to replace me with Gigolo Joe from the movie Artificial Intelligence or whatever. I was like, well, you know what? I've always looked at it like that way. Is whatever makes you happy. I mean, who the hell cares if it's a real human or not? I don't care about that aspect of it, and I can already see that. There's already plenty of examples. If you go down the sex industry route, there's plenty of examples.
well,
of,
I'm sorry.
No. Of where that's working for people, in different facets or capacities.
Just consider. I mean, this would be a tangent, I guess. But I mean, if you consider why people don't like nuclear power, it's the same thing to me on the environmentalist scale. People fought against nuclear power for the longest time. You know how many people are killed every year just transporting fossil fuels?
Yeah.
And there are 35 people on Earth have been killed by a nuclear plant problem, all of which were at Chernobyl. All the rest of them. So and then
All marketing.
But every single year, just transporting fossil fuels, it's like 3,000 people die every year.
Yeah. Not to mention the carbon footprint, what the stuff it puts into the air.
Well, let's not even talking about that. But I mean, so it comes back to everybody thinks that they're arguing against it for the right reasons, but they're not thinking beyond a single generation.
Yeah.
Or even longitudinally over a vast, statistically wide swath versus, well, that's gonna affect me, or that's gonna affect.
Yeah.
And it's not gonna replace creativity yet. Maybe it should if the planet goes into a state where we cannot be sustained, should our thought process not continue somewhere digitally?
Yeah. Or should we not be replaced? Because obviously we screwed up.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, that longer term thing, it's something we've talked about in other conversations too, and I've brought this up as far as like going back to just recently, a lot of wealthier families that do things in more of a long term or a 10-year, not a 5 or 10 year plan, more of a 50 year, 100-year plan.
That's the difference between wealth and being rich.
Absolutely, and that's the conversation we've had a lot of times about the way humans plan things.
Yep.
It's a huge difference, but with AI, I feel like it's kind of rough to do because, again, we're going back to something that's exponentially really just skyrocketing as fast as it wants to do it. And there's a lot of people out there who want to skyrocket as fast as they can.
Oh, yeah.
You know?
I mean, that's where we have to play this again. We can go back to philosophy and ethics.
Yeah.
And it comes back down to we need to make some decisions that are not just singular focused. We shouldn't make decisions on this based on the U.S. or China.
Yeah, yeah.
Because those are the two big players in artificial intelligence, or that's what the war is. War is a bad word, but the competition is going to be considered between China and the U.S. Europe is doing a nice job too, but should we be thinking about it from a perspective of the U.S.? I don't think so. At least I personally don't think so, because it gives us an opportunity to actually do some really good things.
That's one beautiful thing about scientists driving expansion or progress or whatever is you get things like the International Space Station. You get things that are collaborative of multiple cultures and countries and whatever. You don't get stupid politicians who know nothing about this stuff making decisions and creating and reinforcing boundaries that never should have existed in the first place. So yeah, that goes back full circle to what you were talking about.
We all know that collective intelligence outweighs the singular.
I mean,
so it's so important.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's why this is such a badass field to be in right now.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but it's hard to do with America being in there, and we talked about this a lot too. America, I feel like our general population has this me attitude, and I hope that doesn't play into the development of artificial intelligence and to being a race of like, I have to do it like America, we have to be the first one in space.
See, but
have to be the first one on the moon.
That
that
concept
type of mentality
was politically driven.
Of course
it was, but
that
that's
wasn't
what I'm
the
saying.
scientists doing.
But that's
that.
what I'm saying.
We were engineered to be consumers.
Yeah, well, that's what but by the people who are in power. But now the just like kind of what I was trying to make with the analogy of the internet connecting people all over the world together, we have means now as not only the small little guy, but also the think tanks and the companies that care about research and development and science or whatever to bypass our political control. You don't, let's say, Trump, you don't want us to do this or whatever our president.
We're still going to do it.
We're still going to do it because we can. We can go right around you. We don't need your approval. That's one of the reasons, for a fine example of that has impressed the hell out of me since day one is SpaceX. forget NASA. NASA, you got too much red tape. You're too tied to the government. You're killing yourself. You shot yourself in the foot a long time ago. SpaceX has made hand and foot over progress over what NASA could touch because they don't have all the red tape. They bypass all that stuff. That is a kind of benefit and exponential growth and expansion and progress that you can make when you cut out those entities, and that what we can do with the technology we have today.
Well, NASA built the same problem that the military did.
Exactly. Yeah. They fell right in. They may as well be a government entity. I mean,
people are motivated by making more money off of this pipeline, then they're going to start charging more, and then
or motivated by empowering the country, which that's not what this is about. It's not supposed to be that way. And that's where that old school mentality came from, like getting in the moon first or whatever. Great.
Yeah.
It got them thinking, it got them moving, and it created a lot of progress in that fashion. That's fine if that's how we started, but we need to move away from that crap now.
And I'm a big supporter of private entities, making progress and science working in that direction. I would love to see a world where we take religion and politics out of so many things.
Man.
So that is my greatest threat with AI.
Religion.
Yeah.
Yep.
I can see it. I can see exactly where it would fall in.
Because if you created a general AI to improve or make life as best as possible for humanity, and you go down the same road as the paperclip route, and it becomes clear to the AI that the best way to do that is to create a new God for it to worship, let's create a new Bible, and everybody sticks to it, and I'm going to make sure that you all guys are all happy.
Yeah, it'd be a rule book, but yeah, it would be a set of rules to follow or whatnot. But yeah, you're right. If it needs to save humanity from itself, then it needs to govern humanity.
What we would consider a religion today is essentially what you could end up with.
Yep.
If you were to give it the full reign to go out and run things.
Wow.
So I've often wondered about that, because that
the
is
easiest way to do it.
Yeah.
Wow.
Absolutely. And if its prime directive is to ensure human life exists, right?
And peace.
Yeah. But I've often wondered, to what degree would it something like that, if it existed, be able to overstep its prime directives? If we said you will never hurt humans, or you will never enslave humans, or whatever.
Isaac Asimov's.
Okay, I've heard a little bit about that, but so if you never went that route, what is the possibility that it would be able to overstep those in order to find a solution?
So again, it's really important to understand this concept called common sense.
It's not common.
What's that? What? Whoa.
Because it is being run, or it is being built by engineers, and yet it is being affected by the motivations of business often.
Yep.
Business doesn't run very well if it doesn't have customers.
Yep.
So common sense tells you that we're not going to build those type of things, and we'll put those checks and balances in there. I mean, who really wants to build the next religious? Who wants to build the next God? Because
I think that's a great way to make a lot of money.
Could be, depending on what goal you give it.
If I wanted to make a lot of, if I was in this game to get a lot of money, I would have adjusted my voice to be a much better preacher.
That's right.
I'm going to pass the collection plate around right now.
Yep.
Yeah.
Everybody throw your money in.
We're over our hour now, but I want to keep going here because there's a couple of quick things I just wanted to see if you had any say that you wanted to put into it. Kind of some layman topics we had put together beforehand here. Can AI, or is it currently, be implemented into humans somehow via physical implant, via whatever? What have you heard about that? What can you think of any examples?
So the most obvious one is the singularity that people talk about. So the singularity is something that was put forth by, now why am I spacing his name?
It happens to me every time this microphone.
Because you're on the spot, yeah.
Gets from my face.
Kurzweil. Where by 2045 our intelligence will be enhanced or surpassed by computers, and it will be basically an augmentation of humanity at that point. So we will come together to actually. Does your brain need to work on remembering that fact when it can actually go out and Google something? So neural implants that allow you to access outside information or allow you to do things within those constructs.
Oh man,
those things are. He's in the law of accelerated returns. He's got 2045 is when the singularity happens, when humans and machines are equally intelligent.
When we become Borg.
Sure.
But yeah, a lot of things are already leading up to that, like the HUD, the retinal overlay HUD, right? That's a quick access to.
Well, think about just what is it when the cochlear implants?
Uh-huh.
A cochlear implant is an augmentation of hearing, only in the fact that that hearing didn't exist before, but we're going to give you access to audio or the waves of sound.
Yeah. For those who don't know, it's an implant in an area of the side of the head and into the brain that then they have this kind of like what looks like a hearing aid, but then a cord goes up and it magnetically attaches to what's implanted into the skull, and it can sense. The microphone picks up and sends the signals into the brain and stimulates that area so that you can actually create hearing, bypassing the entire hearing canal and all that crap, and it feeds it directly into the brain. Amazing thing, has helped many people. But anyway, yeah, that's what it is.
And we're rapidly seeing the advancement of cellular-based 3D printing of things like lungs.
Oh, yes, that's so cool.
So that's digital becoming something that is an implant what's digital
You're right.
to physical based on your cell structure
right.
that's implanted. And then you can go all the way back to the pacemaker.
I can't wait till they get livers done so I can just drink myself stupid and get a new liver.
First of all, that's one of the easiest things to do.
I know, that's one of the first ones, but I can't get one yet. That's the problem.
Yeah.
So I figure I can drink myself stupid until I'm about 50, and then by that time I can get myself a new liver.
Anybody listening to this, the word easy was very loosely used right there.
Yeah, I've seen a bit, looked a bit into that. There's some advanced technology that's being used to do that, but amazing and a good example. Let's see. This, and I know this is a huge subject, but if you can... just skim over it or whatever and give us some background that you might know about it. What role is AI playing in this current cryptocurrency world that we're living in? Because everybody knows that's a well-coined term now. Everybody's aware of it. So how does AI play in that?
So the cryptocurrency is being traded on a trust protocol, which is distributed ledger technology. AI, I would flip the whole conversation. Within distributed ledger technology, there's something called a smart contract, which is an executable of logic that is on the chain. And man, we can have there's whole podcast dedicated to
I know
blockchain.
it's an extremely complex deal.
That professionally, that I'm in very deep. But it's not around cryptocurrency. It's around the trust protocol and the distribution of a ledger and the hashing of work. That smart contract, I think, is probably one of the best ways for narrow AIs not to run into each other. So 2011, we had two algorithms take off, and they were both trading based on conditions on the stock market. And one of them was going this way, and one of them was going this way, and they hit in the middle. And so basically, they were meeting the conditions of the other one in real time, like millisecond time. And so they created the condition that the other one would trade on, and that one, by trading, it would create the condition of the other one. So they burned $1 trillion on the stock market in like 30 seconds. Okay, and
They fed each other into...
I'm probably doing some hyperbole in terms of 30 seconds, or maybe
whatever.
it wasn't quite
way
a trillion.
faster than we would have done, but yeah.
It happened in minutes. And if there was a smart contract that was done on a trusted protocol like blockchain, then those two would not have done that, because it would have said, if you meet another condition that meets this condition that crosses, and we're both going to go trading into this, here's my smart contract, here's my contract, do we agree? They would have never touched each other. The best place to do that is on blockchain. That came about because of cryptocurrency. Cryptocurrency, though, to me, it is the first place we've explored borderless. It is a autonomous system that adjudicates value to an asset, whether that be a bit or an atom.
Hence the digital cash, right? It's
a beautiful thing, man.
It is. Oh, I agree. Okay, very cool. And the last one I've got here, let's talk about a little more, if you have anything to say on it, AI creating art, since I wanted to save that till the end. But the one that really personally interested me, if you had anything to speak on it, is music. Is there any AI generating music?
Yeah, there's lots of it.
That's crazy. How does that go about?
So it goes out and looks for, again, you can create the conditions, and this happens a lot. You can say, go out and find out what the most streamed downbeat is on, right? Or what has created the most revenue on Spotify that has a downbeat on this, and what's the melody base, and what's this, and so it can go and do constructs of that. That's just very narrow AI to go do things like that. But it's really data science. It's not really narrow AI. It's a data science methodology. But music you can break it down. There's been great stuff out there it's basically classical music that's been created by intelligent systems, I believe, out of MIT.
Wow.
And it's really good stuff. It's not perfect. So here's the asset that is art. It is the human condition that creates it.
Yeah.
It is the flaws of the human condition that create art that make art valuable. And first of all, only humans assign value to things, like an asset to things. I see it becoming a tool for artists. I see code as art.
Oh yeah, it is.
It's poetry. It's a beautiful, math is beautiful.
You're absolutely right.
So it depends on your definition of art, but in the end, art is valued because of a human assigning a value to it, really based on how that human expressed something and how it made you feel. Now, I can see a general AI in 100 years actually buying art.
Generated by us or generated by them?
Period.
Wow.
Because it sees a value and
Yeah.
it wants to.
Invest. Interesting.
But how could AI appreciate art the way we do? I don't see where that program would find value in
So
it.
why do art? So let's go to. I don't want to stretch just to be on a whole lot of time.
Go ahead.
Oh, we're fine.
Yeah.
But consider galleries. Galleries love, let's say, the business model of galleries like art because we split the cost of how much we're going to sell your art for. Okay, so if an AI is going to collect art for the reason of making money, it will appreciate art that it recognizes will sell. If you build an appreciation or empathy and apathy within a construct of a code base, it can empathize with other people's appreciation for it. Beyond that, it starts to get into the point where it goes, I really like this because it satisfied things that made me or that led to all of these different constructs. That's what transference is, though. I mean, transference is this in the past led me to this outcome, and I'm going to transfer that knowledge base to this subject line, and I'm going to make those decisions based on the same thing. So break down appreciation. Because if we're working on breaking down consciousness, we can definitely break down appreciation in mathematical formats.
Wow.
Yeah, definitely. And even before it gets to that degree, just like what we were kind of talking about with the painting generation or generating that painting in the first place, if you fed it enough criteria and it knew what to look for, and then you went out and said you were the art gallery owner and you had access to this AI algorithm that knew how to buy painting or art, and you told it, look, this is your criteria, or just forget it. Just, I want to invest in art. Buy me something. It knows what to buy, what to look for, makes the choice. They do this with stock trading now. I mean, I want to invest money, so send this program out there to go figure out what the best, with this much money and this amount of time and yada, 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 how much profit yield, and they can do it now. It's got all the data.
There's also the other construct that we have crews, art crews, people who bomb in cities that are crews, or we've got not consortiums, but collectives. Use Sacramento's own Real Chicano Air Force. So a lot of their work is that was an art collective here that was part of Cesar Chavez and did a lot of amazing Hispanic work. Their stuff is valued very high. Now, what's to say that same collective couldn't be applied to the people that programmed that algorithm that created that painting that was $400,000, and those are the artists. Those guys who created the algorithm to create the art were the artists, and it's how they decided the conditions to create that piece of art. Thomas, you do the same thing. You've got conditions that you're going to work within to create a piece of art. And yeah, sometimes we'll go way over the boundaries to try something new. So will programmers. So those guys are artists that created that piece of art.
Yeah, I like the example of the parameters. When we were talking about the music, it reminded me, years ago I sat in an office at Capitol Records and was nervous as anybody could ever be at 23 years old, and had these executives listen to music that I've been writing forever, and with a couple of people in, and they examined it and basically gave me a pattern of what I should change it to.
Yep.
And it was a time period, how long it should be, how many times the chorus was in there. It was an actual, mathematically laid out chart of how I should write music.
How to make a successful song that they can sell.
Those are the same assholes that are responsible for every rose has a friggin' thorn.
Absolutely. But it just reminds me of the algorithm of
they're responsible for
figuring that
poison.
out. Yeah.
Nice. One of the reasons I wanted to go into the art thing is, did you guys ever see the movie Simone? It was with, I believe, Al Pacino, and the concept, it doesn't matter, but the concept was that this guy bought technology that was basically a 3D model generating software, a program, a computer, whatever, it was a whole system, that would, with it, he was able to put this character that was generated from this into movies and create entire full feature films using this character with this amazing 3D model technology, right? The point is that Simone never existed. She got wildly famous. She was beautiful. She did interviews. She never left the warehouse that he was filming in Hollywood. And really, the only thing that was in the warehouse was in the stage set or whatever was just his computer and his desk as he would command Simone to do things. Right. So going along those lines, I was thinking, I was fascinated with this concept that if AI was, if it were possible to create an algorithm, artificial intelligence algorithm that could generate, based on all those types of things Thomas was just saying, to make successful music and knowing all this type of other music that was popular and successful, whatever, and you created an artist that created music that did not actually exist, gave it a name, let's call it, I don't know, whatever, James Taylor. It doesn't matter what you name it, right? But you've created an entity that makes things that you like, that people love, that gets famous, and it's not even human.
So go back to the paperclip analogy. Part of what the AI discovers is that the music or politics delivered through music in this country, where I need to get more tin from, is the best way to sway the voters in that country. I'm going to go out and create a band called Rage Against the Machine, and I'm going to basically have that band construct basically the marching tune to the next election, and
with a cult following, and oh man.
So sure. It's all about understanding the human condition and what gets things done.
See, and not even worried before you even get to the point of worrying about what AI might do as far as if it could, using the paperclip theory. I like that a lot now that I understand it at all. Not even worry about that, but the potential that this computational algorithm could start to expand out to the point where it decides things it needs to control that are on such a massive level. That sounds scary. However, that is exactly what's happening and being done to us by humans and corporations and governments right now.
Day.
It's no joke that they bring artists and musicians and movie people and make movies, and the crap they put on the news or whatever. It's all done to control us now.
Springsteen was at Hillary's the last event before the election.
Yeah,
so I mean,
they're buddies.
Well, the whole point was to bring somebody that was popular, was, hey, he's backing him. That band's backing this movement that says we should have more tin mined.
Yep.
So but here's the thing. It all balances out because societies, and if you build the constructs with the rules of societies in there, then it starts to balance out. That's why you look at things like the Magna Carta, or you look at the Constitution, or you look at Stoicism, or you look at different writs of how governance have happened over history. Find the best of breed and start to bring those into the ethical constructs and the philosophical constructs of an AI and how it collects data first and then moves on.
Yeah. And probably in a fairer progression than what humanity will do.
Yeah, I mean, I've listened to. I didn't get into this argument because I didn't want to. I've heard arguments, biased versus non-biased. Should the system be biased? Well, should it be biased to humans at least? So we got to have bias, but do we? I mean, it's just the word.
Once you go down that path, it's like, man. Wait a minute now, yeah.
But it's so cool that AI is creating a new enlightenment because we are having to have these conversations and very, very,
and in turn question ourselves.
Exactly.
I like it. All right, we've gone quite a ways here, and hopefully you guys found that interesting. And if nothing else, I hope it shed a little light on what artificial intelligence truly is and not what the movies portray. And we hope you enjoyed it. Thank you for listening. We'll see you next time. Show notes and other info can be found at our website, greatdistraction.com. The Great Distraction is listed in iTunes, and we greatly appreciate it when our listeners take the time to look us up and leave us a 5-star rating and review. That helps our show grow and motivates us to continue producing content. If you'd like to get in contact with us, you can do so using the email address, greatdistractionpodcast@gmail.com, or via our website. We're always interested in hearing any thoughts, comments, or questions from our listeners. Keeping up on the latest from us can be done in several different ways. You can add us to your favorite RSS feed tracker. The link is available on our website or in iTunes, or you can also follow us on Facebook and Twitter. Just search for Great Distraction, one word, no space. As always, thank you for listening, and thank you for all the support.